Hi everyone, this is Paul Bush-Joy here, aka the Nonconformist Way, and I'm here to do another video for you today. This one is going to be just like basically a talk about Brexit, and this what my thoughts on Brexit, basically on my thoughts on the process and what's happening and what I think should happen and things like that, you know. And once again, yeah, feel free to like this video, to add it as a favourite, and make any comments as you see fit. Good, bad, indifferent, or anything in the middle, in between. And yes, and feel free to subscribe to my channel as well. And other thing I hadn't mentioned in previous videos that you could do is if you really like what I do, then you could tap on the little bell on my channel, my YouTube channel. That way you'll get notifications for every time I upload new material. Okay, well anyway, so this is my talk about Brexit basically. Okay, so well, where do we begin basically? Well, what we can say is obviously so far, we know that originally, like Theresa May didn't want it to get to this stage whereby the MPs got to debate Brexit and to actually, well, just not necessarily debate it, but to have like a sort of a legally binding vote on it. She certainly didn't want that to happen. Theresa May didn't. But anyway, that's where we're at now. And obviously, the Article 50 has been approved by like the House of Commons. Yeah, they've approved it. But now it's gone to the House of Lords, and yeah, it's quite interesting because obviously they're not rejecting Article 50, the implementation of it, or invoking of it, I should say. They're not rejected that, but what they've said is that they had back so far one amendment to the bill, which is that yeah, basically they think that the European nationals should be granted an unconditional right to stay here. And next week, I think they've got like another debate in the House of Lords, which is just on on the same similar sort of issue, which is on whereby they're saying that they think that it's another amendment they propose to actually to let this amendment through as well, whereby they actually think that Parliament should get like the final say on the Brexit deal that we get, or lack of Brexit deal that we get. That Parliament should get a final say on this, you know, as to whether or not the deal gets approved or not. So. Well, and then yeah, and the House of Lords basically they're in favour of this, like Parliament getting the final say, and I would say that yeah, I mean I think that's a progressive step. Personally, I would like I back the House of Lords in improving that amendment, as I do with what they've done with the European nationals. I congratulate them on this, because yeah, I mean why should the European nationals that are here? They work really hard, they're really good workers and everything. I've met so many of them when I go to like coffee bars and things, you know. I go a lot to Costa Coffee and places like that. And they're really hard workers, and, you know, if anything, they deserve a pay rise. You know, a lot of them are on very low paid earnings, minimum wage, and these massive corporations are like paying them, paying like a minimum wage. At the very least, they should be paying them a living wage. And then these workers have got like being told that like, oh, well, you might not be able to stay here after Brexit, you know, by what Theresa May is doing, you know, so no, I definitely can't back that, you know, because we shouldn't be using these people as like some sort of like negotiating tools or something, you know, like they're not like negotiating tools, you know, they're people, they're individuals, and they're no less important than British people just because they're EU nationals from other countries. They're equally as important as, well, they're equally as important as our British nationals that are in other countries, you know. That like obviously want to also be given the right to stay where they are, you know. So as far as I'm concerned, yeah, British people and non-British people are like we're all equally as important as one another, and to say otherwise it's like blatantly xenophobic. Yeah, and this is the thing. So I simply don't understand how it can be right to use these people as negotiating tools, you know, to try to get secure like the right to have our British nationals remain in the other countries, other EU countries. We have to lead by example, as far as I'm concerned. And even if some of our British nationals say weren't granted the right to remain in these other European countries, the unconditional right to do so. I mean, obviously, I think that would be morally repugnant to these other European countries if they took this stance. But that doesn't mean that we should then say, oh well, because they might not do this, they might not let our British workers stay there unconditionally, therefore we mustn't do this with the EU nationals. No, you know, so two wrongs don't make a right, you know. as Mahatma Gandhi, the very good thinker, said, the spiritual teacher said, he said that an eye for an eye will make the whole world blind. So, I mean, I stand by his wise words and sentiments. I don't think that, like, even if some of our British nationals don't get granted the right to remain where they are, I mean, hopefully they will do in these other countries where they live in. Hopefully they will do, I say. I mean, I really hope so. But even if they don't get the right in some of these EU countries, that doesn't mean that we should then, like, I don't know, like, throw out the EU nationals that live in Britain, you know. It's simply morally repugnant after they've come here, like, working really hard, based on the expectation that they're going to be allowed to stay here like forever and make this their home, and then work really hard and then get chucked out of the country, you know. So I simply can't see how that can be morally justifiable in the slightest bit, you know. So, as I said, two wrongs don't make a right. So whatever happens to the British nationals in other countries, like other EU countries, and let's hope it's a favourable outcome for them in those countries, you know, obviously. And in terms of like the Parliament being granted the final say, over like the Brexit deal that we get. Well, yeah, I mean, I support that. Like, and I think the House of Lords is right to do that as well, to back that Amendment 2, which it looks like they're going to do. But what I could also say about this is that I feel that, like we should go even further. You know, we could actually say what the Lib Dems say, which is that there should then be like a referendum. Why not have a referendum on like the final Brexit deal as well? To decide like if the public are happy with the exit deal negotiated from the European Union, you know, so, or at the very least a general election or something like that to determine like if the public back the government's stance, you know, and what's happened. Because let's face it, I mean, is it necessarily certain that we're going to get a good deal with the European Union in 2 years, you know? So by looks of it, it's going to be like a hard Brexit, which is going to be a deal like a free trade deal, which will be outside of the single market, because it looks like we're going to be leaving the single market. And Canada has took like 7 years nearly to negotiate that deal, like a free trade deal with the European Union, because it has to be ratified by all the EU member states. So is there any guarantee that we're necessarily going to get like a really good free trade deal within 2 years? Well, I'm not so sure, you know. I mean, my first preference personally would be for us to try to negotiate a single market deal, a favourable single market deal with the European Union. But whereby like we've got a good deal and things, and that's one that the public would embrace and accept. Would be my first preference, you know. And then maybe we could put that deal to like a referendum, I reckon, to the general public, you know, and see if they accept it. And if not, then it could say something like, if you don't accept it, you could say something like, do you accept the deal, or would you prefer us to go down the route of forming and doing like a free trade deal with the European Union instead? It could say something like that. That could be something like the wording on the ballot paper. So I think we should do something along those lines, is what I think. I'd like to say one other thing about the Brexit thing. I'd like to say is that I'd like to say that I very much back Jeremy Corbyn, you know, in terms of like, I think he's right to like to not try to block the implementation or invoking of Article 50, because I think like the decision has been made, you know, and the vast majority of the British population did vote for Brexit, you know. So I do think, democratically we have to go ahead with the decision and let it wave it through. But it's about what comes next. And what I would say is that there's no, in my opinion, I'd say there's no mandate for us to leave the single market. So our first port of call, I think, should be to try to do some sort of single market deal, try to negotiate a favourable single market deal. And if this isn't achievable, a good sort of deal under those circumstances, then, as I said, we can put it to the public, a referendum, as to whether or not they accept the deal, or would they like us to go down the route of doing a free trade deal, like along the lines of Canada, you know, instead with the European Union. So, I think that's what we should do, really. And things after Brexit that I'd like to see, well, I'd like to see us still be like pro-immigration. Also, one thing I could say, a few more things. I think that like we shouldn't just let in skilled workers. I mean, me personally, I'm not against the idea of the quota-based system. I'm not against the government's idea of having like 100,000, a quota of 100,000 like in terms of people coming into the country each year, like immigration figures. I'm not against that, but I would say that we should allow it. We should allow in like unskilled workers from from outside of the EU as well as from within the EU. We should allow unskilled workers in as well as skilled workers. So because I reckon there's a lot of British workers who might not necessarily want to do the really low paid jobs. That are really long demanding jobs on a very low income. I'm not so sure those jobs are going to be easily filled by British workers. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there'll be like loads that come along, to fill in the gaps, but I wouldn't like to say for sure, So I think we should be open to not even open to. I think we should definitely allow in like unskilled workers as well as skilled workers, because I also think it's an arbitrary decision to not do that. Yeah. And other things, one of the things I would say is that in terms of refugees, that's another thing I was going to say. I reckon that we should take in a lot more refugees, for instance. I mean, again, I understand you have to have some sort of cap, because you can't have totally unlimited numbers, obviously, because there won't be the resources to provide for everybody or the land. I mean, that's clear, that makes sense. And then the quality of life wouldn't be good for the refugees and so on. If there was too many people coming in, we'd be we wouldn't be able to provide a good quality of life for them. And that makes sense. That's not an untenable position as far as I'm concerned, to take that sort of position. But I would say I don't know, I reckon we should have a cap of maybe, I don't know, if we have 100,000, so a cap on immigration figures that we want the most to be for immigration per year, then we should have 100,000, we could say maybe for refugee figures that we should have for per year, the maximum that we're willing to take in per year. We should have some sort of figure for that as well, whereby we say, well, that's the most we're willing to take, but which is a hell of a lot more than we're willing to take at the moment, which is only, from what I can gather, a few thousand that have been coming into the UK at the moment, in terms of refugees, something like that, very few, really, only a few thousands. When you think of Germany, they took in 1 million, which is pretty amazing. So I don't see why we can't have at least say 100,000, in, I don't know, say if there's a really, really bad, things are really, really bad for lots of refugees at any one particular point in time, and there's horrendous situations around the world. I don't see why we shouldn't take in our fair share, like I say, 100,000 limit per year, instead of about a few thousand, which is what it is now, that'd be a lot better. And if each EU country does likewise, has a much higher quota of how many refugees they're willing to take in, and if the world does this likewise, countries around the world, then that will make things a lot better for the refugees, and it's a progressive and and fair measure, I would say, So, I mean, again, these refugees, just as I was speaking about immigrants before, the refugees are no less important than British people, the same as the immigrants, because when we speak about immigrants, because to say otherwise, it's blatantly xenophobic, So, as far as I'm concerned, I don't support the notion, that British jobs are British workers. I remember Gordon Brown said this once. Well, I personally can't support such a measure, because I just find it to be blatantly xenophobic. And, as far as I'm concerned, people, all nationalities, we're all as good as one another, the same as people of all races, sexes, religions, and so on, So I'm very pro-equality, I've got a pro-equality agenda. So that's what I would like to say, really, But as I said, I'm not against some sort of cap on numbers in terms of immigration, when it comes to immigration figures and when it comes to refugee figures, because I think that's sensible. You can't take in completely unlimited numbers of people, because you just simply wouldn't have the resources. The quality of life for them wouldn't be as good for them as it could be if there was lower numbers coming in. And also there's the land issue. Obviously, we wouldn't have totally unlimited land and things, and eventually we'd end up having to decimate, I don't know, massive amounts of greenbelt land and things like that, because there simply wouldn't be the resources to provide for everybody. So you'd have to keep on building new places, and things like that on greenbelt lands, which then harms wildlife and nature. So, which isn't good either, So we've got to get everything in balance, everything in harmony and working in balance. But as I said, I'm very pro immigration, very pro refugees. So I think we can have. I support the government's cap on immigration, the figures for about 100,000 a year. I'm in support of that, but I don't see why we can't have a separate refugee figure, say a cap on that, say for say 100,000 a year as well, which would be a separate cap, because at the moment I think, from what I understand, the refugee figures are included in the immigration figures, I believe. Don't quote me on that in case I've got it wrong, but I believe that that's the case, you know. So I think if that's the case, and as I believe it to be, then I think there should be a separate refugee quota, basically, aside from the immigration quota, and that should be, why not make that 100,000 as well, you know, because well, once again, we can also take the position that refugees are just as important as immigrants, you know, and refugees and immigrants are just as important as British people, you know, because as far as I'm concerned, we're all the same, you know, like we all have feelings, wants and desires, we all have minds, we're all the same, you know, like sentient beings, so we all deserve to be afforded the same rights, really, you know, as do non-human beings as well, because that's another issue that I haven't spoken about here, but you've heard me probably speak about in other videos, because I'm very pro-animal rights as well and vegan. Okay, well, I've gone on a long time now. It's gone over. This is my first video that's gone beyond 15 minutes. So, yeah, so I'll leave it there, because before you all decide, oh my God, how much longer is he going to be on here and how much more is he going to say? So, yeah, I'll let you go, and hope you all have a great night, and I'll see you soon. Peace and love. Bye.